Hello, this is ArtGainz, and this is ArtGainz Live number 5. Got a bunch of topics today, including the riots in Great Britain, various aspects to that, Keir Starmer's background, an Andrew Wilson discussion, and a little bit about a Hodge twins segment, and a statement from Charlie Kirk about whether or not you can be a Christian and vote Democrat. I have some thoughts on that. All right. So, I forgot to say, all right, this is ArtGainz Live, your premier resource for Christian nationalist news and commentary. Eventually, I'll get this figured out, get it a bit more professional. All right, let's move to the first item. Desktop mirror. All right, so in Great Britain, there's a bunch of riots going on, and the police are going after the white people, of course, because that's what the police do these days. And I have a video here of some police officers breaking into into the house of some white British fellow. Let's play that. Yeah, so they're using sawzalls to break through the door of this house. So then they bash in the door with some sort of stick, some heavy stick, and then a whole bunch of heavily armored large men go crashing their way into this fellow's house, presumably because he said something unkind on the internet about foreigners. At least that's how this video is being presented on the internet, and I presume that it's probably correct, and there are many reports coming out of Great Britain of this sort of thing happening. There are a bunch of protests going on, and because the native white population of Great Britain is very unhappy with all of the bad behavior of the immigrants, the mostly Muslim immigrants, and it was kicked off a short while ago by a very unpleasant set of murders where I think 3 young girls were murdered at some sort of dance class, and a whole bunch of others were also very gravely injured physically, and then a whole bunch more than that were obviously injured. What do you call it? They're going to have mental scarring from that for the rest of their lives, probably. And if you say anything bad about this in Great Britain, if you let's say anything hot-headed on the internet about what you think about this is the sort of treatment that you can expect from the British Bobbies. Let's see. What do those badges say? Greater Yorkshire, maybe? I don't know what that symbol is on their helmets. Okay, something. Yeah. So, yeah. So let's see here. The Lotus Eaters have some thoughts on this. Skip to that. Oh, my sound isn't working. Okay, give me a few moments. I'll see if I can fix this. This is very annoying. I thought I had this figured out, but apparently not. Testing, testing. I'm going to have to stop and restart again. Please bear with me. I'll be back in 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, I think I'm back. Let me just give me a few moments to see if this is updating on YouTube. Looks like it is. All right, so here we go.
The 7th, there are 420 arrests and 100 people charged from all the protests after Southport. And the majority of those are white English. I doubt they're going to be the Muslims that are carrying blades and attacking random white people in cars. So again, another bit of two-tier policing. Clear example from this as well. Talk TV decided to do an interview with Nicola Wilcox. Do you remember the video of the white woman saying to the police, "Why aren't you arresting them? Why are you not doing that?" It circulated at the time. It was very famous. What she'd done is actually she went out to give the police officers ice lollies.
Oh, yes, I heard about this morning.
Yes. And they decided to arrest her for inciting racial hatred when she said, "Arrest the people that are burning it down, tell them to go home."
Well, the scariest thing that I heard about this was, I don't know if you're going to play any of this clip, but she's explaining how she went to the police and the police told her to go away, go home. But she'd just come out of her own home and all of the people around her had started to put their hoods up and behave threateningly around her. So she actually couldn't, because she didn't want them all to see where she was going so they would know where she lived.
Because they just set fire to a bus, so it's likely they could firebomb her home. It's a completely valid concern. And then she said she was in the police station for, I think it's that 13 hours. And at the end of it, they couldn't find anything on her. But the police officer said, "Because we've arrested you, we have to charge you." That's not how that works in this system. They've made a scapegoat of this woman who has done nothing wrong, was trying to do the right thing, was trying to prevent the violent rioters from...
Yeah, that's just straight up insanity on the part of the police officers there. That doesn't make any sense. That has no historical precedence. It's totally against the rule of law.
Attacking property and people. And so they have charged her with inciting racial hatred, and now she has to do a 2-hour racial justice awareness course. So a struggle session, because she didn't want her own neighborhood burned down.
And because she wanted to help a pair of police officers.
Yes. Again, the white English who live in these communities are penalized when they don't do anything wrong, but the actual violent rioters, if they are not white, not English, and particularly Muslim, get off scot-free. Yes, that's the perception of two-tier policing in this country. Speaking of Muslims that get off scot-free, Manchester Airport. I'm not going to be able to play this footage. This is the CCTV footage of when the police officers decided to wrestle 2 chaps to the ground, because it turns out, as well done to Richard Tyson Lee Anderson predicted, these chaps started a fight. And the reason they started the fight, as they're saying in a press conference that's happened the other day, is because their mum was on a plane and was being racially abused by a cruel man on the plane from Kuwait, notably white country. He was yelling in Arabic as well. And so they thought that, therefore, because the police wanted to search their mum on the way back, that this was a good excuse to break the nose of a female police officer and start unprovoked fights with armed police officers. It's like, yeah, the guy that kicked him in the face thought he'd taken his gun, so we had to put him out quickly. He acted bravely, but instead, before this came out, the local Muslim community, who don't operate on the same sense of justice as you or I, they privilege ethnic and religious solidarity over a sense of fairness and the due impartiality of the law, they turned out to the local police station and decided to agitate outside of it until those 2 men were released. And then their lawyer went on the airwaves and decided to use exaggerated claims, saying it was... Bear in mind, their lawyer, their former lawyer now, Ahmed Yaqub, was an independent Gaza Islamic candidate in Birmingham. And after all of this, they then have the gall, because the men still haven't been charged, by the way. The CCTV's out. We saw that they did wrong. We saw they were the provocateurs. We saw that they broke a policewoman's nose. They haven't been charged because of community tensions, I'm sure. They had the gall to go and do a press conference saying that the family have been subject to horrific racist abuse. They punched a female police officer in the face. She had lasting injuries. Why are these 2 men allowed to do this, allowed to host this show trial as ambassadors of a community not subject to the same law as the English community? Because there's a 2-tier. Again. Okay, let's go to more recent events before I wrap up. Richard Tice tweeting out the thugs that intimidated a Sky News reporter by saying, "Free Palestine, F the EDL, F the Zionists," throwing up his middle finger and gesturing his intent to discharge weapons, while other men were loitering around a McDonald's with bladed weapons in full shot and puncturing the tyres of the news van as well. Well, they couldn't properly puncture the tyres because they still drove away.
Yeah, one thing I don't get about this is where are the Muslims getting the guns from? There's been a bunch of, at least one video of a Muslim fellow in Great Britain waving a gun around inside his home. He's not outside. It's a very cheap gun, and he doesn't really seem to know how to use it very well. But apparently there's other guns. They have other guns, and I'm like, I thought it was extremely difficult to get guns in Great Britain, but apparently not for the not for the immigrants. So the concept they're talking about here is the two-tier police system, which is where you have two different sets of rules, one for the natives and one for the guests, and it's the standards, the standards that are enforced upon the natives are much more harsh than whatever the standards are for the immigrants. They call it two-tier policing, and they're blaming it on Keir Starmer, who is I should know exactly who he is. I'm embarrassed. He's either the mayor of London or the prime minister. I should know that, but he's a high-ranking politician in Great Britain. And yeah, and he is the one pushing this two-tier system. I saw a political cartoon the other day. It showed a policeman coming to Keir Starmer and saying, there's riots breaking out, and Keir Starmer says, "Oh, I'm sure the immigrants have valid reasons to do that, blah blah blah," and the policeman says, "No, actually, it's the white people," and Keir Starmer jumps up and says, "Throw them all in jail." That's basically what's going on here. But I thought it would be relevant to look into the background of Keir Starmer here. We have an article from the Times of Israel about Keir Starmer. UK leader, a Labour leader, opens up about his family's Jewish traditions. Opposition leader says his children are being raised to recognize the faith of their grandfather's family, wants to make up for lost ground between party and Jewish community. In an interview for the Limid Jewish Learning Festival, this was about 4 years ago, in the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, spoke about expected political topics such as the party's actions on stamping out anti-Semitism in the wake of Jeremy Corbyn's controversial tenure as leader. But Starmer also opened up on a topic he hasn't shared much about, how he and his Jewish wife are raising his children to recognize their Jewish faith. Oh, thank you, ETL, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom since 2024. Starmer, who succeeded Jeremy Corbyn earlier this year, said Monday that he was brought up Church of England, loosely, and my wife's family are Jewish. They came out of Poland. Starmer, 58, so he'd be 62 now, I think, and his wife, attorney Victoria Alexander, have 2 children whom they are bringing up to recognize the faith of part of their grandfather's family. And it's very important, he said. Just carving out that tradition, that bit of faith on Friday, is incredibly important because we get together and we do Zoom prayers now. Well, I've done Zoom prayers. Did Zoom prayers with my girlfriend for a while. Not Jewish stuff, but Bible studies and Zoom prayers, yeah. The family belonged to London's liberal Jewish synagogue, which is situated in the St. John's Wood neighbourhood and belongs to the liberal movement, the more progressive of British Jewry's 2 liberal strains. Okay, I don't know anything about this, which includes Reform. Starmer has hinted before that Alexander's family comes over for Friday night dinners at their London house. Alexander's mother, who had converted to Judaism, died earlier this year. It's been a terrible year for my wife and family, Starmer told Limid. Her father, who was born Jewish and has roots in Poland, lives on the same street as Starmer and his family, he said. On the call, Starmer reiterated his criticism of how Jeremy Corbyn, a far-left politician who has called Hezbollah and Hamas his friends and supported a blanket boycott of Israel, handled the proliferation of anti-Semitic hate speech in the party's ranks under his 4 years as Labour leader. Starmer has tried to turn the page, apologizing for Corbyn's perceived failure to tackle anti-Semitism and briefly suspending Corbyn from the party after he downplayed parts of a damning report on Labour anti-Semitism by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the British government's watchdog on racism. I can't tell you how disappointed I was that morning and the response of Jeremy to the report, Starmer said to Limid. It fundamentally cuts across all of that work that I had put in trying to make sure that we could do the right thing by that report. I think we can make up for lost ground. Asked about Israel's plan last year to annex parts of the West Bank, Starmer said he opposed that plan, but that he does not support boycotting West Bank products in response to it, as some have suggested the United Kingdom should do. All right. So, if I understand this correctly, he's married, his wife is Jewish, and I believe also his grandfather is Jewish. I'm not certain about that. Maybe he's talking about his wife's father. I'm not certain about that, but okay. When I went into this, I thought he also had some Jewish ancestors, but I'm not certain about that now. It's escaping my comprehension right at the moment. But yeah, this sort of thing. It's like when all the people who are crushing the native-born population have certain connections, it gets kind of interesting. You start to notice stuff like that, and like you find this sort of thing everywhere if you actually look for it. It's the people who are I'm not sure what the right way to put it is. The people, well, the communists, let's say, the communists usually have noticeable family connections, which are interesting. And it's probably one of the results of this is that after the Boogaloo, when new societies start to be set up, it's highly likely that the constitutions of these new societies will probably have laws written right into the Constitution saying that people with who aren't ethnically pure won't be allowed to have any positions of authority. At least that seems likely to me. That's what they should do if they're wise, anyway. Okay, moving on to Nigel Farage's response to the riots. I would generally be in support of Nigel Farage, but he says some pretty ridiculous things here, so let's take a listen. Not all of it is ridiculous, but some of it is.
Well, it's been a pretty appalling couple of days. Violence on the streets of this country that we haven't seen for a very long time. Yes, we had the riots in 2011, which were exercises in mass looting, but this is very, very different. Let's be clear. Thugs setting fire to hotels, migrant hotels with people in them, is just wrong at every level. I understand the frustrations. I understand the anger that is felt by huge numbers of people, but I do not support street protest, violence or thuggery in any way. And that's why for 30 years I fought elections, because I believe that democracy is the peaceful way to solve problems. And as for the Tommy Robinsons and those that genuinely do stir up hatred, well, I've never had anything to do with them.
Now that's an interesting statement. He's publicly separating himself from Tommy Robinson. I was not expecting him to do that. I'm not certain that you could say that Tommy Robinson has been calling for violence. I'm pretty sure he would definitely deny that, and I don't think I've ever heard him say anything like that. So it's very strange for Nigel Farage to be saying something like that. It seems like he's trying to placate someone, but it's very strange.
In fact, I was the one person above all that got rid of the BNP as an electoral threat. So as for what is being said by the Anna Soubries of this world, the Andy McDonalds from Labour of this world, the accusation that somehow I'm orchestrating these riots, nothing, but nothing could be further from the truth. We've even got national broadcasters like James O'Brien calling them the Farage riots. This is unfair, untrue, and actually, it's directly inciting violence against me. Indeed, over the weekend, I've had to have a massive uplift in personal security, and that's been advised by government agencies. So all this peace and love that we hear from those on the left simply isn't true. The Prime Minister has misread this completely and utterly. Just to call out the actions of the far right is to misunderstand two things. Firstly, let's be clear, there were masked Muslim extremist mobs, some with weapons, going around the streets of Midlands and northern cities, threatening journalists literally running away. Indeed,
Yeah, it's strange how he's trying to separate himself. I guess it's not that strange that he's trying to separate himself from the riots. I mean, he's this fine, upstanding politician, but it's sort of like when you have such a high-profile murder, like a murder of a bunch of little children, and a bunch of little children getting injured. Like, what else are you going to expect? Like, you're going to expect people to stay at home? That's not going to happen.
in some cases, people even having their tires on their cars slashed. So of course, as with every major conflict in life, there is fault, serious fault on both sides.
Now, that is the statement that really takes the cake there. Like, someone goes out, they get murdered, and they're like, oh, yes, there was serious fault on both sides. What? No. Not. What on earth are you talking about? That is ridiculous.
But behind the extremes of both, what Starmer doesn't understand, and when he says, I'm going to stop the far right, what he doesn't understand is the general feeling of dissatisfaction that has been out there in this country growing for years.
Dissatisfaction is, what's the word? Talking it down. Understatement. It's a lot more than dissatisfaction. At least it's very quickly becoming a lot more than dissatisfaction. It's outright boiling over rage, I'd say.
Talked in the general election about societal breakdown. What I meant by that were communities being split apart, people not even recognizing the centers of some of our towns and cities as even being vaguely English anymore. And
I heard recently there's a syndrome, I think it's called Paris syndrome. It's not exactly what he's talking about here, but it's where tourists in Paris get physically ill because they're expecting it to be one way, but it's actually quite different. Like they're expecting the Paris they see in the movies, the bright lights, the pristine clean streets and all that, and the polite citizenry. But when people go visit there, mostly it's Asian people, when they go visit Paris, they discover that if it ever was that way, it is not like that any longer, and it's quite disgusting there. And it's so common for tourists to get sick that they made a syndrome, Paris syndrome. And it's not exactly the same thing as what Nigel's talking about here, but it's similar. The character of the country and the cities has totally changed due to all the guests.
When it comes to the issue of two-tier policing, something which Keir Starmer denies, I promise you this perception began back at the time of Black Lives Matter. Remember? Churchill's statue being defaced, the cenotaph being abused in central London. And the police response? They knelt down in the street and took the knee to a Marxist organisation that wants to bring down Western civilization. And it goes on and on from there. Compare the policing to the riots in Leeds with the policing that happened at Southport. And look.
Yeah, what you have to understand about what's going on here is that the elite, the way this happens is that the elite are a bunch of foreigners for the most part. And I mean, things have been bad at various points in history when the elite were natives. You know, so that you get despots and tyrants or things. But the absolute worst events in history, usual periods of a country's history, are usually when it's ruled by a bunch of foreigners, and that's what's going on in most of the Western world today.
I am not having a go at individual men and women serving as police officers. I'm appalled that so many have been very badly hurt over the course of the last few weeks. I'm talking about the direction of policing.
Yeah, I remember trying to figure out what the deal was with the police at one point, because I thought, okay, someone joins the police and they're supposed to like protect the community. They're supposed to create a conducive environment for productive behavior, they're supposed to produce an environment which is conducive for people to be prosperous and all that sort of thing. Supposed to punish crime, but then there's so many points in history where you see that that's not what the police are doing. But so how does that come about? And it's actually not that complicated. It's because, well, the police will do whatever the people who are paying them tell them to do it. And so if the elite think that it is in their interest to uphold the law, punish crime, and keep the streets clean, then that's what they will pay the police to do. But the moment the elite decide that it's in their interest to oppress the people, to wield their power in a despotic manner, or to crush the native population, then that's what the police are going to do, regardless of whatever kind of oaths they may have took, regardless of whatever kind of propaganda they might have at one point absorbed regarding like the role of police in society. And that's how you end up with the police acting like a literal gang of thugs, which is what's happening in various parts of the Western world, particularly in Great Britain, which is, most people don't have guns in Great Britain. And so it's a lot easier for the elite to impose their civilization-destroying agenda on regular people.
Is it any wonder that the boss of the Met, Sir Mark Rowley, brushed away a microphone yesterday when he was asked about two-tier policing? Priti Patel, you're wrong on this. Keir Starmer, you're wrong on this. Most of us think that ethnic minority groups are policed entirely differently to that of white British people. Folks, that is what the country feels, that is what the country thinks, and there is evidence to back it up. We can quell these riots, of course we can. We can use force, we can put people in prison. After all, there's lots of room in the prisons now, after we've let so many people out. We can do all of those things. We can bring the army in if we absolutely need to. We can stop the riots in the short term, but, and here's the important thing, do we want to deal with the symptom that we're seeing today or solve the problem? Dealing with the symptom will turn us into France, where these flare-ups, these racial tensions between the Muslim community and the French right flare up month after month, year after year, leaving big parts of Marseille and Paris effectively no-go zones. Is that what we want? Or do we want to actually solve the problem? And I believe we can solve the problem. We need,
let's see what he says,
to end mass immigration now to send a message to people. We understand.
Nope, that won't do anything. You have to send them back.
Understand that a 10 million population increase has put massive pressure
It's okay to send them back.
on people's lives. We need to deal with the young men, undocumented young males, crossing the English Channel. Just today we learn that the Labour government are going to close down the hotels, close down the RAF camps like Wethersfield and Scampton, close down, as we learned last week, the Bibby Stockholm. They're going to put all these people now into government and private rented accommodation. So if your kids are trying to buy a house, trying to rent a house, or trying to get onto a social housing list, they've now been put even further to the back of the queue. Do you think that is going to solve any of these tensions, any of these problems? I promise you that it won't. We have.
Oh, sorry, my mind is just racing here. I'll try to slow down my thoughts so I can communicate what I'm thinking about this. It's absolutely amazing that anyone in this day and age can still be a libertarian, that they think that adopting libertarian principles would possibly solve this problem that we're facing. Like what is required is reverse social engineering. We've faced several decades of communistic social engineering. We literally need Christian Nationalist social engineering that will train people to behave in a manner which is conducive to civilization. And let's see, what does this have to do with Farage's point here? Oh yes, Nigel Farage, probably not the man to instigate reverse social engineering, but yeah.
Have to be clear that whilst we've always been open to genuine refugees, no one that crosses the English Channel trafficked in a small dinghy will ever get refugee status. And thirdly, we absolutely need to get all the police chiefs around the whole of the United Kingdom together and to say to them, start policing even-handedly. Treat everybody in Britain and be colourblind, absolutely colourblind. If you're operating stop and search in an area that happens to have a higher black population, remember, most of those that are being murdered are black. End this constant discrimination. End this diversity agenda. Treat everybody in Britain equally. And if we do those things, we'll remove many of the underlying tensions that exist in our country. And I put that to Sir Keir Starmer as a challenge. We're not even 100 days in to this first Labour government in 14 years. Remember, of course, he doesn't have much legitimacy anyway. The party only got 33.8% of those that voted. Only 20% of the eligible electorate put this man in power. He needs to start listening to the people, and the vast majority of people are decent, are law-abiding, support British values, believe that this is a great country, as I do, but are fearful. Fearful for the future, the integrity of family, community, and nation. And I really believe we're at quite a perilous point. If we allow all of those things that we've built, defended over centuries, if we allow all of those things to come under threat, then we are in very, very big trouble. We will decline down the order of countries in this world. And remember, we're envied by most of the world. Our form of democratic government, the way we've always organized ourselves. It's one of the reasons why so many people actually want to come here. There are many, many good things about us.
You know, this makes me think it's great that Nigel Farage wants to uphold law and order, right? And he's opposed to the riots and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, the Great Britain and the rest of the Western world is not going to be able to vote their way out of this problem. In order for these problems to be solved, it will require right-wing revolution, and that will require a group of very different sort of leaders to arise. I'm not sure to call them politicians. It will require, well, I guess you'd call them kings to rise up and use force to forcibly correct the errors of the last, I don't know if it's the last few decades or the last few centuries, perhaps. I'm not sure. ETL asks, why does Britain seem so eager to go full 1984? Yeah, this is something I've wondered about a lot. It's like they have such stupendously good, what do you call it? History, like they have so many good examples of how to think and how to behave, and at the same time, they just dive headfirst into the utmost nonsense. It's like they're too. I think who was it? It wasn't Christopher Hitchens. It was let's see. There was Christopher Hitchens and his brother Peter Hitchens. Right. It was Christopher Hitchens, the Christian one, and he made the comment that the Brits are too clever for their own good or something. I think he said something like that. And became too enamored with their own intelligence, and that led them away from the plain, simple truth that we need Jesus. Jesus is the only way. Moving on to, I think this is the third item. This is not so much about politics. This is about feminism and female empowerment. This is from the Whatever podcast. This is Andrew Wilson being accused of being a right-wing extremist by a feminist lady who I presume is a OnlyFans person. But here we go.
So for the majority who
so
don't
annoying?
agree with Christians or, your view on how this country should be, where are they left?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So people who don't align themselves with Christian values or views with the freedom of religion in this country, where are they left being represented or supported by this country?
It's going to be the same exact place where anybody would be left if they refuse to follow the rigorous morals and the tailorings that society produces for them. The same place that you would be left in Japan if you weren't following their cultures, customs.
Yeah, so this girl is trying to figure out in a Christian society, wouldn't non-religious people be oppressed? That's what she thinks, and Andrew's trying to set her straight on that.
And rituals, the same places that you would be left anywhere, right?
Is this not a melting pot of a country with different values?
He doesn't
This
like
does
that.
not.
He doesn't,
This
I
does
know,
not in
but
any way.
He would do great with the
even
CCP.
Okay, so anyway,
Would he not?
this does not in any way deter from this idea. We are a melting pot, sure. Does this mean that you would import tons and tons and tons of people who thought that murder was okay?
No, because that's
Right. So
Not-
so if they don't coincide with your values, it's okay for you to exclude them. And so this is the thing, is like, we think the same exact thing. We think it's perfectly acceptable that if the majority has these beliefs inside of a democracy, which is what liberals claim they love, that if we take that democracy over and impose our world like liberals are doing to us, there's no problem with that.
But no, because
Yeah, so if I were to try to explain what Andrew's saying there, he's saying that whatever sort of society you have, whether it's Christian or the Chinese communist or global homo, like what we have today in the Western world, every society is going to try to impose its own system of morals and ethics on people, and this girl doesn't understand that. She thinks that there's something different about trying to impose a Christian set of morals and standards on people. But Andrew's saying, no, every society does that, and it would be practically, it would be no different if there were a Christian society. I think that's what he's saying anyway.
there's no law saying murder is okay.
What would that have to do with anything?
Because you said we can import a bunch of murderers into this country, they have the choice to murder, and there's going to be consequences that you face.
No. You're missing the idea here. Let's assume that you could import the value of murderers to the point where they became a serious voting bloc. They could then, theoretically, impose their will via democracy.
Oh, come on.
Look who it is. This is Ju Yuen.
By voting in people who then made murder legal, right?
Like Christians?
So, are you going to answer my question, or?
I'm just saying what you're saying.
The abortionists think the Christians are the murderers. Okay.
No.
So anyway,
no one
back
ever
to
said that.
Well, that's what you just said.
No, I didn't.
You said like Christians when I was referencing murderers.
No, you said forcing people to have these views. I said
no.
like
What
Christians in comparison.
Yeah, I don't know
when
why.
you said, "Oh, we're going to import murderers."
Yeah, she's making the crazy eyes, where you can see a sliver of white above the pupils, above the pupils. Yeah. I've tried to figure out what exactly the thought process is behind people who make that expression, and I think what they're trying to do is trying to make themselves look childlike or something, I don't know. I think it has something to do with trying to make themselves look childlike.
Here because they'll have a bigger influence. I'm just trying to finish and get this thought out. So we're going to import murderers here so they can have a vast influence on the voting majority, like Christians, right? Because Christians, you say, are the majority, and their law should rule
or liberals, or women who are the majority, or whoever. It doesn't matter.
It's not a perfect country for everybody, but it shouldn't be based off a single religion.
Why? Why not? Because you just don't like it, right?
No, it goes against everything this country was built off of, right?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Who built the country? A bunch of white Christians?
With the freedom to practice religion.
Yes.
And the laws you're voting into...
First of all, the reason that there was an allowance of the practice of religion, you couldn't be a Catholic. You couldn't even come to this country if you were a Catholic. You couldn't even come. The reason...
Yeah, most people aren't aware of that. The Founding Fathers were not that enthusiastic about Catholics.
Is because Protestantism is divided. They did not ever think that this was going to be a non-Christian nation.
But
none of our founders ever thought that.
Christians demand a lot of respect from people they don't respect themselves.
I don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
If you don't believe in God, you're going to hell.
So?
That goes against spiritual people. Why is your religion the most important out of the hundreds out there?
Right.
Why should you be heard and no one else?
I'll explain.
The most important.
Why is
the
going to
explain.
She's arguing like Vosh.
So that you understand,
things. That's
right?
what I'm wondering.
Oh, I understand.
I don't think you do because
why you think
because I'm
Christianity...
granting your worldview. I'm saying let's assume Christianity is the worst. It's like the worst.
I never said it was the worst.
I know. Let us assuming we're going to assume it. Well, you know it's not true.
He should ask her if she'd be hungry if she hadn't had breakfast this morning.
We're just going to pretend for a second so that we can do this hypothetical that it is. So we pretend Christianity is the very worst religion ever. Mm-hmm. And you import into your atheist country a bunch of Christians who tell you, we want to definitely impose our Christian will on your atheist values. Okay?
Okay.
If you import them into your democracy in significant numbers, and then they begin to multiply, right? They could feasibly, inside of your democracy, begin to elect politicians who share their values, right? And if they share their values, they're going to implement the law based on the values they share with that now largest voting bloc, right?
Okay.
So if they do that, what actually would be the fundamental problem with that?
Christians don't run America. Are you the majority?
She doesn't get what the point that he's trying to make. Whatever the whoever runs the country gets to impose their moral standards on the rest on everyone else. That's just the way it works.
Sure. But I doubt all the Christians out there agree with the extreme right-wing views that you are portraying that they have. Because it's not all Christians, right? It's just like it's not all men.
Andrew's given up.
It's not all Christians. There are Christians out there who love thy neighbor, right? They love thy neighbor and they love you regardless of what you choose to do, and they're not going to force you. Are they going to sit there and because they love you, their way of loving you is teaching you about their God, right? But they're not going to force it on you.
Can I? Okay, I'm going to piggyback. So this whole thing started with why do men, from a viewer question, why do men die by, you know what? No, we're not allowed to say it, at a higher rate. And
Self-deletion.
I've noticed in my adult life how men namely, and I have many close to me, who grew up in a very highly religious, some cult-like, some, deep Christianity, have some serious
Thank you, Robert
issues now, right? Because of the confines that they were forced to be in. And as grown adult men, they can't cope. They're still figuring it out and learning their
I think they've moved on to a different topic, but it's kind of hard to follow what exactly she's talking about.
way. So I'm trying to understand how you rationalize why you can't even, I mean, I get it, you have really rigid views, but why you can't see that. Secondly, secondly.
Well, let's do one at a time.
And also,
Okay, that's fine.
let's actually do just one.
Okay.
And let's
Okay.
have Andrew answer in about a minute,
So when
because I
you're-
want to move this
Yeah,
Okay,
when
okay. Fair enough,
when
yeah.
you're talking about the rigidity in views, how have I been rigid? I've answered every question asked of me, dove into each worldview that you've given me, and shown where the flaws in them are. That is a lack of rigidity. That is me being completely fluid in ideology,
Okay,
so that
I think
I can internally critique from where you're coming from. What's really hilarious here, none of you have seemed, maybe her, right? She's a smart one because she's quiet, but I'm kidding, I'm joking. But anyway, none of you seem to be able to do the opposite for me. None of you seem to be able to put yourself here.
Yeah, that is a common thing when talking to leftists. They're not able to get inside your head, so to speak. It's relatively easy to get inside their head and argue from their perspective and demonstrate how, even from their own perspective, it doesn't make any sense. But you very rarely come across leftists who are able to get outside of their own box. And yeah, I've also encountered that when arguing about religion with people, but yeah.
Hang on.
Hang on.
Hang on.
on.
I'm almost done.
And actually, none of you even get to respond because he has final word. I have to move it on. It's been too long.
So anyway, none of you even seem to be able to put yourself in my shoes to hear what I'm saying, to even hear what I'm saying, because
I just
she
asked.
responded to an argument I didn't even make twice. And then when I come over to you, when you're asking me this question, you say, I don't understand. It's these Christian men who grow up in these rigid households. Okay, I'm sorry, but Christian men, they're the stability of society, least crime rate.
they're
Hang
freedom
on.
of opinion.
Hang on.
No, I'm
your
going to move it
opinion.
on.
The least-
I have to move it on.
No, I'm going to demonstrate real quick, okay? As far as crimes go, as far as commission of crimes, as far as being in poverty, as far as all of these things, those Christian men from two-parent Christian households have the best outcomes in all of those regards. The ones that come from the single mom alternative households, not so great.
What about the
Not
priest?
doing so hot.
What about the priest?
Well,
Hey,
with women,
we're-
you're so
stop.
Now, by
pro-patriarchy.
alternative,
Yeah, Andrew is so good at debate here. It's like most people, when they're having a conversation, they're too polite to actually understand what's going on. Like most people, their gut instinct whenever they're talking to someone is to presume that the other person at least has some idea what they're talking about. But more often than not, whatever they're saying is just complete gobbledygook, and it's just a distraction, and it's a real skill to be able to just consider whenever someone says something that what they're saying is absolute gobbledygook, and just stay like a rock on whatever your base perspective is.
if I didn't even mean
His-
LGBTQ, I'm just saying anything alternative to the
He's just
two-parent
by
household usually
rigid.
has.
He's
Yeah.
super patriarchy. Your wife wouldn't even be able to write her book or live her
Okay,
expression.
They-
in, in other countries, in Iran, these girls aren't even educated.
Women
They're
have
not
been
allowed to go to
writing books
school.
for hundreds of years under the patriarchy.
it's okay. They'll find a thing
Feminism
for
had some of the most prolific writers pre-suffrage. Those were the best writers. The shit writers came after suffrage. So they were cruising around with this evil patriarchy who was oppressing them, writing all kinds of books, traveling the world. They really had it rough. They had it rough.
I do have.
All right, moving on. Want to do the Hodge twins next, or sure, I'll do the Hodge twins. Okay, Hodge twins. If you don't know who these guys are, they used to be on Steven Crowder's show quite a lot. They're not on there so much anymore, but they're right-wing African Americans. They have a show. I'm not sure how long it is. The clips they put on YouTube are usually very short. They're about 10 minutes or so. They might have a longer show that's on some other platform, but I don't really pay that much attention to them. And you know, some of the people who I hang out with on the internet, their opinion is, you know, white people shouldn't be listening to black people about anything. But I'm not certain I entirely agree with that. These guys are kind of funny, especially when they're talking about their fellow African Americans.
Good show. I don't think black people should vote. I think they need all their voting privileges stripped. And I'm about to show you why. I don't think they understand how the system works. I think so.
Okay, one of the reasons that I wouldn't take these guys too seriously is because they've done a few things which would indicate that their judgment is somewhat lacking. One of which is that at one point in their lives, when they were down on their luck, they considered doing porn, and they went so far as to actually go into a porn studio, and I believe they got hired, but they were smart enough not to go through with it, at least. But anywho.
No, I think something wrong with them. Yeah, go to the video.
A harm or injury. It's got to be considered a nuisance. How many people have to die here before they realize it's harmful? We want to make sure that when we go in these stores, our kids go in the stores, or wives, or children, hey, we want to make sure that we're safe when we go in these places. We're going to keep on coming.
Yeah. So these fellows are in this TikTok video. They're arguing that the gas station should be shut down because so much crime goes on in the gas station and the surrounding area, and they want to be safe. So if they just close down the gas station, everyone will be a lot safer.
And we're going to keep on fighting until we get something done, until we save people from getting killed right here.
The citizens stand up and speak out. We're going to continue to do that, and for the next generation, those next ones up that come up, they're going to be affected, and we want to make sure we change the narrative.
If you're providing a business that you see is detrimental to the community that you're serving, and that your business is causing people to lose their lives, then you should have the integrity of a human being for yourself to say, we need to shut this down.
Okay, just give y'all some...
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Context, this is a gas station, a Texaco gas station. There's a lot of people getting hurt, killed at this gas station. So the residents in Jackson, Mississippi say, shut this gas station down. Yeah, guns don't unalive people. Gas stations unalive people. Man, that's low IQ right there. Hey, I think y'all own to something. Y'all think this gas station gonna stop the black people from unaliving each other? I think you're on to something. Let's get rid of all the business in Jackson, Mississippi. Yeah, so all y'all have to leave. Then all that crime leaves. I just can't. I done gave up. I thought you could actually help some people, but I could see if it was actually a store where it was like he had prostitutes in the store, he was selling hard drugs in the store, he was selling guns, illegal weapons at the store. And then people was allowed to lauder and drink and do drugs and stuff. Yeah. And all this was because of that business providing these services and resources. Yeah. Then I can understand closing the store down. Yeah, but it's a Texaco gas station. Is that a trap house? You're selling donuts, gas, windshield wiper fluid. They selling lollipops for the kids, bubble gum, popcorn. If they close down, where you gonna get your do-rags and your Swisher Sweets and your 40 ounce?
ETL says they have a firm grasp of the obvious, just can't always hold on to it. Yes.
And how about them chicken sandwiches they sell out? I mean, come on, black people, think. Man, let's look at them again. I ain't looking at that. I won't look at this again. This is like a parody. No, man, don't look at that. It's gonna kill some brain cells. No, I'm gonna look at this. No, man, don't look at that. No, I'm gonna look at this one more time. Man, come on, man. Now, if y'all don't do it like you. Hey, now a lot of people are not aware of this place, Jackson, Mississippi. That place is a microcosm of Chicago. It's a miniature Chicago. It's a miniature Detroit. He just did a political speech and then he's just...
One guy's pretending to be on pot.
That dude don't know where he at. Jackson, Miss.
You know, if my dad was listening to this, he probably couldn't even understand what these guys are saying. Their accent is so strong.
Mississippi. That is a dangerous place. That place is actually so dangerous. They wanted to, I forget what they was doing with the police there. Ban Negroes. I mean, if y'all want to stop the crime, I think y'all trying to ban the wrong things. Hey, maybe if you ban black people. Hey, look, you can ban guns. You can hide a gun. Yeah. You can't hide no Negro. You can't stick a Negro up on a mattress. His feet gonna be hanging out. His mushroom tip gonna be hanging out the other side. Can't hide a Negro. Yeah. You want to ban something? I was joking. Can't do that. Man, that is it's something going on right there. Well, that one Stokes, he's a city council member or something in that place. An elected official. Yeah, I used to thought people in our government were like very bright and intelligent. But no, they're only they are a representation of their constituents. Yeah.
One of those guys in that video is a politician. He's an elected politician.
And we just got a good look at him. Man, Jackson, Mississippi. I don't think Jesus can fix that. I think you go to church. God, like, you know what? Done. I'm done. I'm bringing the flood. Playing. Just get away from me. Just get away. I'm bringing the water again.
I heard a quotation recently. It was, it was something to say to if someone asks you something to say if someone asks you if you're racist, and that's if they say that they're not racist, you can say the reason you're not racist is because you don't live in a black part of town. Because if you did, you'd see stuff like this.
I'm bringing the flood. I ain't giving y'all no art. Y'all gots to go. I'm starting all over. It was a huge mistake.
Right, so I think that's enough for that. Moving on to Charlie Kirk saying you cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat. Now, oddly enough, this does lead from the Hodge twins segment, but I'll let this play out for a few minutes and then comment on it.
Sounds good. Well, thanks. My wife and I've got 2 kids. It's a blessing indeed. Came an hour and a half. And I also appreciate the fact that you are outspoken about your Christian faith. I mean, you made very clear here that your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, is who you live your life for. So I have a question along those lines. I've heard you say a few times, and I just caught this in a few videos, and I don't date all your videos. So you'd mentioned this statement. You cannot be a true born-again Christian and vote Democrat. Do you still stand by that statement?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the notable conservative evangelical Christian John Piper?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Are you familiar? Are you familiar with his article he came out with November 2020, right before the election, on policies, persons, and paths to run?
Effectively, can't vote for Trump, can't vote for Biden. It was like a middle ground, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, in a sense.
His deal's Irresistible Grace. That's his blog or something, right?
Desiring God is his well-known blog and channel. Yeah, you're good. No problem.
He's a very well-respected theologian, yes.
Yeah, for sure. So I was just going to maybe mention a quick little blurb of what he said and then maybe ask how you would kind of respond to that, if that's okay.
I generally agree with that description of John Piper. I vaguely remember hearing some bad things about him, but for the most part, it's I have good impressions about him.
And so in the article, he said, okay, so we think that policies that endorse baby killing, sex switching, and freedom limiting and socialistic overreach are viewed as deadly, and they are. Indeed, I completely agree, 100%. All those things are completely evil. He said, however, I remain baffled that so many Christians, of which, of course, many in this room are, consider the sins of unrepentant sexual immorality, of course, we're talking about a specific someone here, unrepentant boastfulness, unrepentant vulgarity, unrepentant factiousness, and the like, to not only be toxic to our nation. And so he ends by saying this. In fact, I think it is a drastic mistake to think that the deadly influences of a leader come not only through his policies, but also through his, and not only, excuse me, the deadly influences of a leader come only through his policies and not also through his person. Yes. And so all of us are going to be...
So I guess I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but it's like, has John Piper never heard of the Emperor Constantine? Not the greatest guy, made a huge ton of mistakes, and yet, did God use him? Obviously. He was the turning point that made the Roman Empire Christian. So if God can use someone like Constantine, he can practically use anybody, regardless of whatever flaws they have.
Be faced with a decision here in 7 months or so when we go to the polls in November. And so my question for you is, you know, as I'm talking specifically for those who claim to be born again, sincere, authentic Christians, and I'm asking you, how can you illegitimize the faith of a sincere, Bible-believing, prayerful, submitted to the Word of God Christian who simply determines that a man who engages in blatant and unrepentant sin should not lead our country? So how can you illegitimize that?
Did John Piper say he was voting for Joe Biden, though?
He said that this article is the closest thing that you can get to determine what I'm voting. He didn't say specifically who he was going to vote for. Okay, so that's different. So my statement was the following. You cannot say you believe in biblical principles and vote for the principles of the Democrat Party. They're incongruent. They do not fit. And that's not what I'll address John Piper. I agree with you.
No, I know you agree. So I'm going to address the John Piper thing because I disagree with what he said. But my position is this. If you're a born-again Christian, by the fruit you will know them. And if the fruit is that I will cast my ballot for a party that had Gretchen Whitmer and Gavin Newsom and Eric Adams and Joe Biden spend more wording and video time on Easter Sunday talking about trans rights than the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, that supports the massacring of children via trans and also abortion, that you cannot be a Christian and vote for that. Now, John Piper did not say he was voting Democrat. Yes. So he doesn't even fall into what I'm talking about. So let's talk about John Piper. What John Piper is saying is that I believe abortion is wrong. Okay. I believe that the transing of kids is wrong. I believe all this sort of stuff. But I think Donald Trump is this unrepentant sinner. And I would say, Mr. Piper, what do you have to do with the story of Samson? Should he be in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews? According to our own scriptures, it says that Samson is in the righteous Hall of Faith. If you know the story about Samson, he's sort of similar to Trump, the hair. God came to Samson while he was in the bed with a prostitute. Samson took the jaw of a donkey.
Yeah, I can't remember the where the Hall of Faith is. It's in the New Testament. It has a list of a bunch of Old Testament figures who were remarkable in their faith. It includes Samson and Deborah and a bunch of other and who is it? Elijah, I think. Prophet Daniel. But yeah, it's a list of heroes of the faith from the Old Testament, and there's a history of people like wondering, some of those guys weren't that great. So what are they doing in this list? But like Samson, very sinful man, but for some reason he's still in the Hall of Faith passage in the New Testament. That's what Charlie Kirk's talking about here.
And killed 400 Philistines. He wasn't exactly your perfect mold, but God used him for a purpose. And I would ask John Piper, can God use broken, sinful vessels for his purpose? He used King Cyrus to bring God's chosen people after the first exile for the reconstruction of the Second Temple. And the question for John Piper, he says, I remain baffled. Well, you shouldn't remain baffled, Mr. Piper, because the people that are Trump supporters that are Christians, they know Donald Trump's faults. They could...
Mama Grizzly points out it's in Hebrews. If you want to look it up, it's by faith Abraham, etc.
Recite them back to you, just like they know their own faults. But he also has virtues. And I never hear the virtues ever articulated from people like John Piper. What are the virtues? He's awfully courageous. Would you keep on fighting if you're facing 700 years in federal prison time and your family's business empire is at risk of being taken from you? Would you keep on running for office and keep on fighting if everything you've done is in front of you? I don't know if I would. Secondly, his love of country, I think, is unparalleled, unprecedented. Finally, he was conflating a policy agenda with personality. He says a president is not only personality or policy, but it's also personality. But policy is far more important than personality. I'll prove it to you. If you turn off your TV and you tune out of all the media, will you still be impacted by the president? Yes, by his policy. And so the question for John Piper is, you're watching way too much mainstream media. You're being infected way too much about a man that I don't think you even know, but can you acknowledge that Donald Trump delivered 3 Supreme Court justices and gave us the overturn of Roe versus Wade? If we voted the way that John Piper wanted, or let's just say embrace that belief system in 2016.
Yeah, I don't want to derail this. Most of what Charlie Kirk is saying here is correct. There is a slight problem with, well, I don't know. Actually, it's not that slight, but I'll get to it eventually. But yeah, it's worth listening to this, I think.
We would have had Hillary Clinton as president, and we never would have repealed Roe versus Wade. The embassy would not have been moved to Jerusalem. We wouldn't have had peace in the Middle East. I could go on. I think we proved that the first Trump presidency, flawed man, excellent policy, fulfilling his promises. I don't think any Trump supporter, is necessarily in disagreement with what I would have said. I'm baffled by John Piper, an alleged humble, fervent, dedicated Bible teacher that can be indifferent to 1 million abortions a year, 100,000 kids on hormone blockers, a wide open border, the destruction of Western society, race hatred, defunding the police, rising crime, the downfall of Minneapolis, his hometown, and him preaching about Donald Trump's personality. It's on you, John Piper, to explain yourself, not us. Go ahead, really quick.
Yeah, you're good. Again, John Piper would obviously stand.
Yeah, he sort of got away from the point of the question. The question was, you can't be a Christian and vote Democrat. That's the actual question that was asked.
Against those things categorically.
But he's not voting.
Categorically and unequivocally.
But if you don't vote against it.
And John Piper wouldn't be the only one who would take this sort of stance. I mean, if you're going to oppose John Piper as a notable conservative,
well, I can listen. Andy Stanley, Russell Moore, John Piper, Rick Warren, Timothy Keller, who's now passed away. If they're
David Platt, we could continue to go
yeah, but
on and
why
on.
won't they vote to end abortion? Period. End of story. If you will not vote to end abortion, stop telling me you're a Christian all the time. Start acting and voting like you are a Christian.
I think they're just saying that we can't have unconditional support of an individual simply because of his party.
We have unconditional support of biblical principles that a flawed vessel fought for and achieved. So Russell Moore, David French, all these guys that go around and talk about how terrible the Christian right is, how can they reconcile? Because they're going to have to go in front of a supreme ruler of the world, Jesus Christ, and says, why were you preaching in the New York Times and writing these long, meandering op-eds about how you didn't like Donald Trump's tone when you were given a binary choice, babies saved, babies murdered? And they're like, well, I don't like his tone. What kind of a Christian is that?
He didn't mention tone. He mentioned unrepentant sin of 5 different categories, all of which are mentioned explicitly in the New Testament.
Okay.
If I was an Israelite...
Yeah, you could look at the life of Samson, and you could say not a lot of evidence of repentance in his life, except maybe at the moment he died, but yeah, that's... Yep.
Light in the time of the Old Testament, I would not have advocated for Samson as leader. He was not a commendable leader. I would not sit here and
why is he in the Hall of Faith? God thought he was a great leader. Thank goodness you're not the judge of men.
I would not sit here and campaign for Samson to be judge.
God put
Samson
in Hebrews. You didn't.
So did he put Jephthah too? And Jephthah was a child sacrifice.
Yes, so maybe we can learn from the...
That's a debatable interpretation of that passage, but I'll overlook that.
The flawed vessels of the Old Testament, not try to apply the perfect interpretation of the law. You're making my point. So It's not even a choice is what I'm getting at. If you believe in the biblical principles, if you believe in what the Bible says, to love life, to love the unborn, to care about those that can't defend themselves, it's a binary choice. And it's not about defending the unrepentant alleged behavior of an individual. It's did that individual advance the priorities that we care about? And the answer resoundingly was yes.
Yes, and I would agree.
Yes, so you should vote Trump.
That's not the end. Do we really think that's the end, though? I mean, to think, I think it's a biblical principle, Charlie, and hopefully you would agree that it's not only policy.
What is he even arguing for now?
That a leader advocates for the impact the nation.
You're right. It's also Supreme Court justices.
Yes, and it's the character of an individual.
Okay, well, hold on.
I could go through script.
Yeah. Sorry, this is getting further and further from the main point, but yeah, at this point, the wickedness of the elite is just so extreme that the Christian thing to do would probably be to vote for Genghis Khan if Genghis Khan said that he was going to remove the elite, and you'd have people like this saying, but he's such a bad guy, and it's like, well, he's maybe yes, but he's removing people who are a lot worse than he is. He's being used by God.
Scripture.
Have you ever met Donald Trump?
To advocate this? No, I have not.
Okay, so but hold on. I think this is
ironically that is actually what they say Genghis Khan did. He might have been an incredibly bad guy, but the people he was removing, the elite he was removing, were astronomically worse than he was. I'm not an expert on Mongolian history, but I have heard things to that effect.
This is super important because absent meeting an individual, you don't know who he truly is. But let's say he's all those terrible things. I'm a sinner, Trump's a sinner. Trump has done more to fight for the priorities that I care about, and I believe that every Christian should pray deeply and act to defend the unborn this November. Thank you so much. We'll get to the next question. Thank you. We got to get to the next question.
With it. Do you think Jesus of Nazareth, first century, who you and I both follow, do you think he would agree with your statement that no born-again Christian?
I think Jesus of Nazareth would have handled Trump like he did in John 8. He would have said, do not cast a stone against Donald Trump. He would have said, Trump, sin no more. You know what he would have said to Charlie Kirk? He would have said, don't throw a stone at Charlie Kirk. Charlie, sin no more. Because we all fall short of the glory of God. And God uses all of us as broken vessels for his purposes. All of us.
Sorry about the microphone breaking up there. That's in the video itself. That's not on my end. Okay, so I don't disagree with much of anything that Charlie Kirk said there. The main point, however, you can't be a Christian and vote Democrat. That is an interesting question. So Charlie Kirk, the argument he tried to make was the policies of the Democratic Party are so evil that, you know, if you're a Christian, you can't possibly vote in favor of those. And here's the thing, like he might be right. Like if the genocidal, murderous agenda of the Democrats is so obvious, it is hard to understand how a true Christian could possibly vote Democrat. But here's the thing: some people are really stupid. Their IQ is really low, and the reality is that Christianity is not just a religion for smart people. Christ came to save everyone. Christ was was not a distinguisher of. He was not not distinguished between persons, as the Bible says. There will be all sorts of people in heaven, regardless of how of their race or their intelligence or their education or all that sort of stuff. And one aspect of it is that one thing you have to keep in mind is that it's a terrible thing to have to recognize, but people are limited in the level of virtue that they're capable of achieving by their intelligence. So someone might be saved, but the level of their of the virtue they're able to achieve is unfortunately limited by their level of intelligence. And I'll try to explain what I mean by that. So if you have a leftist, you have a Democrat, go to someone and they say, okay, we're going to give you stuff. We're going to give you money. We're going to give you things which you need in order to survive. An intelligent person is smart enough to know, well, that's nonsense. The only way they're going to be able to do that is by stealing money from productive members of society and giving it to the people who are less productive, right? And they'd be right. It is unethical, it's immoral for the government to engage in that sort of thing. But if you're stupid, if you have a very low IQ, you're not going to be able to make that connection. You're not going to be able to make the connection between free money and that money being stolen from productive members of society. And that's what IQ is. IQ is the ability to make connections between things. So I'll just say that again. If you're intelligent, you know that the government isn't actually giving you free money, that's stealing that money from productive people. If you're stupid, you're just going to think that money just comes out of the air. And like, you might be a Christian, and no one doubt, I'm not going to cast any doubt on whether or not someone's a Christian if they are a follower of Jesus Christ, but it is entirely possible for someone to be a follower of Jesus Christ and not have the IQ to understand that if the government says that they're going to give you things, give you money, there's something immoral about that. All right, let me check my notes here. So that make sure I got everything. Oh yes, one more video. Here we have. Let me switch back to Gab. All right, here is a video retweeted, retweeted by Andrew Torba from Sky News.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence. And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrests and so forth. So it's a really, really serious. People might think they're not doing anything harmful. They are, and the consequences will be visited upon them.
Yeah, so basically the Great Britain is well on its way toward a sort of Chinese system where if you disagree with the government, with the official narrative, the government will come and arrest you, strap you to a chair so that you can't move, and then have some official shout in your face and make fun of you as you're immobilized and try to re-educate you to be to conform to the way you're supposed to be. Yeah. And, oh, I know, this should be interesting. Here is a fellow talking about how to bug in your house. So opposite of bug out. Bug out is when you have to take off and run. This guy's talking about when you have to fortify your house.
Come here, I want to show you something. This is what will keep you alive in the next crisis. In it, you'll discover exactly what to stockpile inside and how much of it. Long-lasting foods, water, communication devices, a survival generator, and many other items that you'll need to successfully bug in for months or even years. I've written everything down in this book, called A Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide. To find out more about A Navy SEAL's Bug-In Guide, simply click on the link below. I've made a free video presentation that explains everything you need to know, including how you can get a hold of your own physical copy should you need one. And if you watch until the end, I've got a surprise gift that will probably help you out a lot in the next crisis.
All right. That's the sort of thing that I think we should all be thinking about these days. I'm sure most of the people who found their way to this video have heard all that before, but it's always good to point it out. So I could just keep going through my Gab list here, but that would be interminable, so I think I'll call it quits for the moment. All right, so this is ArtGainz. This is ArtGainz Live number 5. Your premier source for Christian nationalist news and commentary. Not much else to say. Have a good evening. Oh, and thanks for stopping in. Make sure to like and subscribe, share with your friends. And if you have any comments whenever I'm doing this, please don't hesitate to ask any comments whatsoever. It's always good for me to have a foil to respond to when I'm doing this. It gives me more input to have rolling around in my head. Grease the wheels of thought, so to speak. All right. So, have a good evening.